Yeah, good question. Sorry, I also realized that my introduction was not very good. So I feel like I'm going to expound on it before I answer this question because I was like, growing up in Hawaii, I was like, oh, I should have mentioned that. Hi, I'm Aria Villafranca. I'm an artist and editor from Hawaii, and I was formerly a managing editor at WEBTOON Entertainment, and I am an Ignatz nominated cartoonist for the graphic novel In the Shadow of Giants. That's what I should have said in the beginning.
It's
Now you know.
okay. It's all right. No harm, no
Okay.
foul.
That was just bugging me. I was like, oh, can I go back and like redo it? Can you edit this in? Oh, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm great. Hey, how's the first few weeks of August treating you?
It's good. It's been a bit big. Can you hear me? Like, I'm using headphones, but I don't know if they're working.
I can hear you.
Oh, I can hear you now. I'm so sorry. I tested this before and
Your voice sounds a little glitchy
hold on.
or something.
All right. That there is no,
There you go. Oh, wait, you're muted again. I can't hear you. No.
that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. I will just do this then. Um, okay, can you try to talk?
Hello.
Hi. Okay, I can hear you. Is my audio okay? Because I tested this with my camera and it came in clear, so I don't know what's going on with Zoom.
Yeah, I can hear you clear. I can hear you. You can hear me.
Yes. Can you hear the squeaking in the background, which is my dog?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Then we're good.
There you
Yeah,
go.
but yeah, how is your August going?
My August is fine. I'm trying to get back into work mode. Summer's over.
Mm,
But
hmm.
it's time to get back into it.
Yes. Good luck.
So, have been busy?
It's nice to
Busy?
get a break.
Yeah. Been busy, been traveling to a lot of different events lately.
I was in New York for a week, a couple weeks ago, and that was my last big trip for the year. And so I'll be staying put, hopefully not traveling as much. I went to, I think I took like 6 or 7 trips in 6 months. I think I'm good. I think I'm good with doing that for the time being.
Well, hey, you're a busy person, so I don't blame
Yes,
you. So, well, if the small talk is over, I guess we can go ahead and get this thing started, okay?
sure.
So, greetings, everybody. This is Phil. I'm host of the Conversation Podcast, and I've got a special guest with me here today on this Sunday afternoon. It's a little rainy, but it's not going to bother my connections. So, introduce yourself. Who's Aria Villafranca I'm speaking to?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Aria. I am a comic artist and an editor, and I draw and edit comics. Self-explanatory.
Yes, she heard him. She does draw a lot of comics. Also, one more thing. What are your pronouns as well?
Oh, yes, she, her. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Just make sure I get it right, okay?
Sure, sure.
Sure thing. Well, before we get into it, let's start with a little bit of an icebreaker. So you'll like this one because I came up with it myself. Now, have you ever decided to come up with any comics based on the places that you traveled, maybe out of the country a few times, or no?
Hmm, that's a good question. Sort of. I didn't base anything off of like a specific travel, but I think it was more like the more I traveled and saw, there was like a thematic underpinning, which was like ostentatious wealth juxtaposed against poverty. And that kind of influenced the body of work that I did from 2015 to 2019. Uh, So I guess that's not a very fun icebreaker answer, but I guess that's the closest thing that I would say.
No, no, it counts. It counts. It's something.
Okay,
It's
okay.
something. Because I was going to do like an extra one and ask you if there's any place that you haven't traveled yet that you really want to go to.
Oh, I mean, there are places I want to travel unrelated to the stories of my comics, but I would love to go to them for other influences. Like I would love to go to Korea. Like I have not been, just funny considering my employment background, but I've never been. So I would like to go, and I would like to go to Hong Kong. Again, haven't been. And yeah, I want to go to a ton of places, but I feel like those are kind of like top of my list. Um,
Mhm.
and because I went to Japan last year on vacation, been to Taiwan
Oh,
several times. Yeah, super fun. Highly recommend.
I hate y'all.
Yeah, so
I
I
hate
mean,
y'all.
just Asia in general.
I
It's,
hate y'all.
it was a really good experience to just go, and I had been wanting to go for years, obviously, as a weeb, you gotta go.
I need to go. I'm
Yeah,
trying my
yeah.
best right now. It might have to be early in 2027, but yeah, my parents went to Japan because my mom had a
Mm,
conference and I couldn't go because I was only a kid. You can't,
right,
it was no
right.
kids allowed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want selfishly, I wouldn't want to bring a kid to Japan, right? Because I'd be like, oh, well, I want to go do my things. Actually, what's funny is that my mom also went to Japan before me. And I was like, and she doesn't even travel. She just kind of hopped on my aunt's uh trip. And I was like, how was it? She's like, it was fine. And I was like, wow, like you didn't even deserve to go. Like you didn't appreciate it. She's like, yeah, it's okay.
Mhm. Sorry, I'm just upset at myself. I'm just upset at myself. I want to go
It's
so
okay.
badly.
In due time.
Okay. In due time. Well, now
Yeah.
that the ice is broken, I guess we can get into the main story here. Now,
Sure.
I think sorry if I was late with the questions last night, but I think you saw them just to make sure you got a
Mm,
clear
mhm,
understanding, okay? So
mm.
I really need to work on not sending those questions so late at the last minute. I'm doing a good job. I need to do better with that.
It's okay. You
Um,
got to keep me on my toes.
so there's 20 questions, but some of these I might put them in the two parts, okay?
Sure. That's fine.
So So let's go ahead and start with the origin story before the canvas, Aria's beginning. Now, before comics, editing, webtoon, or art school entered the picture, who was Aria Villafranca and what were the earliest things you found yourself drawing simply because you had to get them out of your imagination?
I see. Well, not to be uh, a trope, but I drew since I could hold up a pencil. But it's funny. So I remember one drawing I did in kindergarten, and then it's just blank until sixth grade. Um, so I have to talk about what I was drawing in sixth grade. So earliest I can remember, and it was two things. One was fan art. But now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I was like, why am I drawing this fan art? Like, it wasn't like a huge influence on me, but I just really like the show. So like I used to draw Recess fan art, if you know that cartoon, like
Yes,
Disney's Recess.
I
And
remember that old cartoon.
yeah, yeah,
That
and
was such a classic.
yeah, no, it really was fun. And like Fairly Odd Parents fan art. And again, it's like who's drawing this fan art? Like I went home and I was looking through this like book that I had a collection of that my mom still kept like all my sketchbooks. And it was this book full of fan art. And it was just like, yeah, here's Spinelli, here's the April Fool. Deep cut for Fairly Odd Parents fans. So I was just drawing like random fan arts of these cartoons that didn't end up actually influencing me, which is really funny. But I also drew around that time my original characters, and I basically made like this Timu Marvel Cinematic Universe of these characters that were basically every single character was a knockoff of something that I was watching at the time. So I was just making this universe of these like knockoff characters, unintentionally. I thought I was being so original, but like I had a Superman knockoff main character, and then his enemy was this mad scientist who's a bad guy from this N64 game that I played with my cousin called like Clay Fighter 63 and a third or something. And then his dad was like Shredder from Ninja Turtles and his mom was Samus. It's this whole thing. But I drew all of this world building stuff for this story and I drew a comic for it actually for from sixth grade to 10th grade. And it's
Mm-hmm.
still my second longest work that I've ever done, which is super funny. And I reread it recently and it's so bad, but it's so funny. Like it's just so goofy. Um, so yeah, my OCs and Recess and Fairly Odd Parents. That's what I had in my mind and my heart.
Well, hey, you gotta like have those old classics to go in your head and
Mm,
everything. Because I've seen some people who be watching like Toonami and then Kids WB, all
yeah.
that stuff. Those are some good channels, but they went off the air after a few years later.
Oh, for sure, for
So,
sure.
the way let's see, what WK. Oh, and 4 Kids TV as well. Did I say that
Oh my
already?
God, yes,
Yeah, Four
yes.
Kids.
No, you didn't, but yeah, those Saturday morning shows were like my lifeblood, like, like Shaolin Showdown, Static Shock, Teen Titans, like, oh my God, like classics. Man,
Don't forget
whatever
about
happened to those? Like
don't
those
for
are great.
don't forget about Sonic X and everybody
Oh
else.
my God, Sonic X. That is a deep cut. Like I love that. I was so into that. Oh my God, actually that reminds me. I actually did have another OC. It was a Sonic knockoff, except it was a monkey named Chip, and instead of running fast, he could jump really high. And like I
Mm.
designed this whole video game where he was like fighting illegal loggers. And again, this isn't like sixth grade, so I guess I've always been woke. I don't know.
Oh, okay, okay. Hey, that's amazing. That's really amazing stuff. And I know, if you see some of like the stuff that happened back on Nicktoons back in the day, they did like behind the scenes of how they did these characters. Okay, well,
Mm,
take Butch Hartman for example, who did The Very
sure.
Our Parents, Danny
Yeah.
Phantom, Tough
And
Puppy.
Danny Phantom.
Yes, I still like Tough Puppy. I have to say, I did not go see Jerry Trainer when I was at that convention last month. Why didn't I not do that? Shoot. It's okay. Next time, buddy. Next
Next
time.
time.
So yes, they were showing like all the ways they were designing the characters, like Danny Phantom. They were showing like Butch Hartman was just doing behind the scenes of how he drew Danny. Because here's the thing, like most of
Hmm.
like you don't see most of his legs. Like I was like, I don't want to
Sure.
put the legs because he's a ghost hybrid. So we want to make sure we keep that same tone
Hmm.
instead of just using his feet all the time.
Yeah.
So, and then you got, there's also some more behind the scenes with SpongeBob as well when they did all those like scenes when they're like designing and drawing Plankton and SpongeBob.
Hmm.
It's amazing stuff. I was like, man, I need to go back and see those behind the scenes stuff. It's really fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like behind the scenes documentaries are great. And like if you have books that are sort of like the making of, like I actually stopped by, they had a Studio Ghibli pop up here in Los Angeles. And I went and there was just this book for 20 bucks. That's actually here on my table. I don't know if you can see it. It's right there. But it's like just behind the scenes and focusing on like specific artists and designers that worked on Ghibli stuff throughout the years. Really interesting stuff to get into their mindset.
Mm, also, that's you're lucky to go to Studio Ghibli, especially because
Yeah.
I forgot you were Los
Mm,
Angeles based.
yeah. Yeah.
So I'm a little jealous, but I was like, I can't listen. One, wait, hold on a second. Wait, can you see? Yeah, my thing's kind of,
You're kind of blurry if that's what you're. Oh,
yeah,
you're.
there we
Oh,
go.
welcome back.
That's better. Yes, but here's the thing, I know Los Angeles is kind of expensive these days, so that's why I said I
Oh
can't make
yeah.
it there. But, my sister would tell me, here's the thing, I defeat myself too quickly. So I need to
Hmm.
try to, figure out things. Because thing is, I do have plans to go check out. I originally had something planned for my birthday next month in
Mm.
September, but it looks like that's not going to happen. So I was like, I guess I could go to Dragon Con. I do want to see Jack Quaid after Superman just went off with
Oh
his third.
sure.
Well, after Superman just
Yeah.
came off with his third season last night. So I was like,
Oh
I was like,
nice.
I guess I could go to Dragon Con next month. So it's something to figure out. But back to you. But yes. So you went to
Sure. No.
Studio
No.
Ghibli, but you went to Studio Ghibli and all that stuff and checked out
No.
the what they.
Well, they had a pop-up store in Los Angeles, but I did go to the museum. Not to make you jealous again, but I did go to the museum when I was in Japan. I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I was just curious because I don't know, like, what you do in artwork. I don't know if you actually go to some of these events they have in Los Angeles or get invited to some of the things
Yeah.
they have. I don't know
No,
if
just as
you.
a fan, just as a fan stopping by these like pop-up stores and like, events and whatnot. Like they had, and I mean, lucky to live in Los Angeles where they do have a lot of these events because Anime Expo was just last month, I think, and they had like the Kodansha House and the Ryokokui exhibition. Lots of cool things to check out as if you're a comics person or someone interested in comics and manga and anime.
I want to try to see if I can go. I'm going to see if I can try to get the Anime Expo because it's actually on the same week as my
Oh,
mom's about to have another conference in San Diego,
oh,
California.
okay.
And I was like,
Oh,
well,
yeah, you should
shoot.
just go.
I was like, I'm gonna have to figure out how am I gonna get to Los Angeles because between San Diego
Well,
and Los Angeles, it's
it's
like how
only a
many?
2 hour drive. Like you can just go with your mom. I'm sorry, not to like talk about your plans, but like, go with your mom and then rent a car and drive up. Like apparently it's very close, supposedly. I've
2 hour
never been to San
drive?
Diego, but yeah, 2, 3 hours. But I mean, I would drive from Savannah to Atlanta for one concert and then just drive back. So it's nothing's too far if you really want to go.
Yeah, because Atlanta's like 3 hours, but 4 hours if you count the traffic.
Yes, yes.
So it'll work itself out. But shoot, that's amazing. Well, shoot, I hope you because I was thinking like you do. I've seen so much work you've done. And I was like, why does she not go to some of these events and these people give her more opportunities? That's what I'm curious about. You
I
know,
mean, yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, well, no. I was finished.
Oh no, no, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I just need to email more people and be like, "Hi, do you wanna?" Because I mean, I have gone to things for work before. Like I have gone to like New York Comic Con in a professional capacity, but um, I guess there's no harm in asking or trying to go to places more. I mean, because I do attend as like an attendee, but maybe all it takes is to just ask. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly. And listen, I'm not trying to force you to do it. It was just a suggestion or recommendation.
Sure,
So
sure.
I just never thought. I was like, she's doing this for a while. Does she not email the students or I don't know. But that's something for you
I
to
could do
figure
more.
out.
Yeah.
So it's something
Yeah.
for you to
Thank you.
figure out. So, oh, next up. Oh, here we go. Growing up in Hawaii, if I got this correct.
Yes.
Um, you were surrounded by a very particular mixture of cultures, landscapes, community, and stories. Now, how did growing up there shape the way you see the world as an artist today?
hmm Yeah. Good question. Sorry. I also realized that my introduction was not very good. I feel like I'm going to expound on it before I answer this question because I was like, growing up in Hawaii, I was like, oh, I should have mentioned that. Hi, I'm Aria Villafranca. I'm an artist and editor from Hawaii. And I was formerly a managing editor at WEBTOON Entertainment. And I am an Ignatz nominated cartoonist for the graphic novel In the Shadow of Giants. That's what I should have said in the beginning.
It's
Now you know.
okay. It's all right. No harm, no
Okay, okay.
foul.
That was just bugging me. I was like, oh, can I go back and like redo it? Can you edit this in? Just kidding. Don't worry about it. But yes, anyways, for the listeners, hi, this is me and my experience. Now you have context for all of these questions that are going to come up. So growing up in Hawaii, this is actually a great question. Um, I feel like it did really influence me because like Hawaii it's a very unique place. And I feel like technically every place you grow up is a unique place, but I feel like in the context of America and Americans, Hawaii is basically its own country. Um, like not to get into the history and politics of it all, but it just it feels very separate from America. It's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It was very relatively recently incorporated into the United States, and there's just a very unique mix of cultures as like this place in the Pacific, as this place related to America, as this place halfway between America and Asia. There was a lot of cultures and communities there. And that diversity in communities and its focus on like history and the past and the preservation of culture and art, I think it really kicked off my imagination to be interested in things like fantasy and adventure because exposure to all of these different types of traditions in terms of like storytelling and myth making and and the actual history of it, and different types of like clothing and architecture, and the fact that the preservation of all of these things are very important. I think that just made me really like the idea of like an epic, like a fantasy, like imagining these different world building and stories and people, and like wanting to invent my own and stuff like that. So I think that's a big part of why I really like fantasy. And then um, I guess other ways that it influenced me is just by the being growing up in Hawaii. In school, you learn about the history of the United States and like colonization and how the kingdom of Hawaii was overthrown and such. And I think that really infused an interest in politics in my stories, and I guess in the way that I read stories and the stories I'm interested in, both the politics in the story itself and outside of the story, and like what the story is trying to do. So like if you look at something like Avatar: The Last Airbender, that was something that I think was
Hmm.
interesting to a lot of people, but I really felt like attuned to something like that because it reflected a knowledge that I already knew even as a kid about the way that like government and politics kind of interact in this historical way. And then it had this like fantastical element, so that made it more fun. But I think at its root, it just echoed something that I had just been taught in school. So I feel like that influenced the types of stories that I wanted to make. Um, and then there's also the fact that Hawaii is very beachy and outdoorsy, and I don't love the outside, so I did stay inside and draw all the time, which is why I do this professionally now.
Well, hey, it's working out for you, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I would say that is a huge crux of how it defined my interests and my worldview, and what I want stories to do and how I want them to have a positive impact and what I want them to show in the broader scheme of things.
Mhm. Yeah, and I will also say this, sometimes, in our in these shows too, there are some, because I've been seeing a lot of stuff, 'cause I'm trying to get too political here, because I've been seeing a lot of
Sure.
stuff in like the anime sphere where stuff is starting to get political. There's been some
Hmm.
elements in One Piece going on and
Oh
everything.
yeah, of course.
So I didn't realize it until like now because I was like, oh shoot. Well, as a kid, you really don't listen. I was only a kid when this was going on back then, but as a kid now, as an adult, you start to see. Oh, now I'm starting to understand the context of what this episode is trying to teach me, pretty
Hmm.
much.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
as far as with you in Hawaii, there are some, yeah, they do have a lot of history in Hawaii as well because it's been
Yeah.
in the crossfire with the U.S. and all the other places
Yeah.
too. And it's also rich with a lot of context and history. Because because I think when you were in Hawaii, you were also coming up with ideas to express your time in Hawaii, as well as connecting it to the political
Hmm.
state that it's been through
Yeah.
throughout the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I think that's the important part of you doing that. I think more people ought to be aware of the history of where they've been for so long,
Hmm.
because we just
Yeah.
don't know until later.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it definitely is easy to take a lot of things for granted. Like I
Hmm.
think a lot of these things that I talked about influenced me, but in a way that I didn't realize. Like, I wasn't kind of deconstructing like, I wasn't like 16 and being like, you know what I like? I like politics because I grew up in Hawaii. Like, I think it was more of like this undercurrent. And it goes along with my belief that you can't really escape the influence of like where you're from. Like, I think a lot of people may feel that they are not influenced, but I think it's just like a matter of like upbringing and environment, and like what you're exposed to is this cocktail of how you see the world and like how you relate to it, both agreeing with what you were raised with and what you're surrounded by, but also like challenging it and fighting it. And but like I feel like things like taste and interest, like that doesn't just come out of nowhere. Like you can't never be exposed to anime and then just suddenly be like, you know what I love? anime, this thing that I've never seen. Like it's like you have to be exposed to it to have an interest in it. And I think it's that's also something for me that was very influential is the fact that in Hawaii, like I was very surprised in retrospect when I was in seventh grade, my library, my local library in my hometown, just had this huge manga collection because it was very um like there's a huge Japanese population in Hawaii and there's a lot of Japanese cultural influence. So manga was never seen as weird or anything, which I hear in other parts of the US it was. So I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like I heard that people used to get like bullied for liking manga, but I don't think I had that
Hmm.
experience. I don't think I ever really felt that um growing up. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a difference because I know some people on here on the US they have been bullied over stuff like this, and it's like, oh shoot, or hey, I can't really teach you about if you're gonna be like this because it's like, hey,
Mhm.
I'm just enjoying what I like enjoy. Now, some people, I
Right,
think
right.
because since the anime is starting to become more mainstream now, I think people are starting to understand because now you got movies
Yeah,
breaking records, making so much money now.
for sure.
So I think it's something that we all have to keep an eye on and try to educate as po many people as possible
Hmm.
as
Hmm.
well while we're doing it. And speaking of the culture, this actually goes into the next question I'm about to ask about you. Now,
Hmm.
you're a Filipino-American, correct?
Yes,
And
correct.
identity and cultural history have appeared throughout your creative journey. Now, when did you first realize that your heritage wasn't just part of who you are, but could also become part of the stories you tell?
Hmm. Hmm. So funnily enough, after that whole spiel that I just made about how the culture influenced me, I actually didn't realize this until I was in college because I was really interested in the concept of like fantasy and world building. And basically, when I was in my undergraduate like art program, I was developing like these worlds but they weren't really my culture. And they're like, European medieval influence or like Bronze Age sort of things influence. And I mean, it's very cool, like not to toot my own horn, but it's like, this is very cool. It's very cool concepts. And a friend of mine was like, hey, did you ever consider maybe using your own culture, like, Filipino culture? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I think I got a handle on this. But it kind of got me thinking. And when I went to my graduate program, I really started unpacking a lot of these things about like why or why not was I interested in sort of this heritage that I already had. Um, and then, when I was starting to get exposed to a lot more artists and what they wanted to talk about and all of these other different comics, I felt that in like the late 2010s, early 2020s, we're really starting to see a lot more active representation in comics. And I feel like that made it sort of click for me, where it was something that I could explore. And I started reading some fantasy stories that, again, were really trying to tap into this. I guess trying to counter the reflect. Like, if you grow up in America, you are going to be interested in like European fantasy. Like, that's just a given. Like, because what else would you like? You're so exposed to it that you will be interested in it because it's cool. But I started being exposed in my graduate program to a lot of comics that were really trying to unpack this and um, show another option. So if you've ever read uh, Monstress, um, the fantasy the fantasy comic from Image, I think. I read that, and they were specifically pulling from a lot of cultures that were not European. And then this web comic called Witchy by Ariel Riaz that I really, really love. And it was also very much pulling from Asia and particularly like Central Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. And I thought it was really cool. So it kind of got me going to think about how can I tap into my own culture and both create something that feels fresh, but also learn more about it for myself. I actually ended up writing my graduate thesis on this, is how to, as a diasporic person in the United States, the benefits of sort of using your art and your interest in fantasy to reconnect with this culture because a lot of like I don't want to speak for everyone in the community, but a lot of Americans who are part of a diaspora as second generations, they feel disconnected from like the culture of their family. In my case, my mom specifically was like, we're not going to teach you the language. You're just going to speak English. And like her motive thought was like, yeah, you're American, so we're just going to really assimilate. But now as an adult, I'm learning the language again on my own. And I was like, man, this sucks that I didn't know this when I was a kid. And so that sort of separation is very, very common because there was a means for immigrant families to want to assimilate into America. So so it was basically in college when I was like, oh, I should be thinking about this because you can't really separate yourself from your identity. But in a lot of ways, you are separated from your identity by means of like the way that you may have grown up. And art is a good way to explore that, unpack that, and, just make your cultural connection stronger. And it's like, you don't have to do it, but I wanted to do it. And I ended up doing that for a larger work that I am kind of working on in the background and what I wrote my thesis on. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, I want you to preach. I want to know everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, yeah, I was like, when I was listening to you, I was like, so your mom didn't teach you language at all? I guess because, I'm trying to figure out how to say this correctly. Like, was she trying to like protect you from all the like negative? Because I know like sometimes when you're a different culture, sometimes you face a lot of
Yeah.
negativity in the States. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it
Mm-hmm.
happen, like, on social media, in person and everything. A lot of stereotypes and stuff that's going around.
Yeah.
But I think it pretty much happens in like in any country that you go to, because there's still hints of like, stereotyping and racism going on
Yeah.
that you may not know about, and other, like, because I seen a few incidences where in different countries where they do face those kind of situations. And
Mm-hmm.
something I usually stick to is like, hey, nowhere is safe. I mean, you're gonna have people who are gonna criticize how you look and whatnot.
Yeah. Mm.
And I think it's good that you were trying to, while you were in college. I was like, maybe I really need to start thinking about my heritage and put my heritage
Mm-hmm.
into these projects. I'll give you a few examples. Now before you graduate, I think you've seen some of the fashion shows here in Savannah, right, with SCAD and everything. If you
I
haven't, it's
actually
fine.
didn't. Yeah, I wish I did. But you know what? I just never heard about this. Like I was really not plugged into other departments
Yeah,
um in
yeah.
Savannah. But
There was
please tell me about it.
Yeah, there's been a few fashion shows I've been watching for a while now, and I've seen different students make up their own costumes based on their cultures.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's pretty neat. Now, listen, I don't know much about fashion now. I'm not a fashion guy, but I do know how to analyze and see their context on why they did this certain outfit. I
Of
think
course.
recently I saw a Korean person put on a dress that was blue and green. It had like a lot of bit of
Hmm.
flowers on it because she was trying to express the way her culture does things back in Korea, kind of thing.
Right.
I'm not sure how it works. I need to do more research. I'm trying to listen, Aria, trust me. I'm trying my best when I see stuff. I try to get as much research
Sure.
as I can. Sometimes it's not 100% valuable, but at least I got something so I can build towards that 100% that I'm trying to explain to you.
Yeah.
But there's also been a lot of Mexicans and Filipino people been customizing their own costumes at SCAD to show off at these
Sure.
fashion shows based on their cultures. And I was like, they took this is really amazing. So because now it's like I
Hmm.
want to talk to them at a later date and ask them questions.
Yeah, for sure. You do have the platforms.
So yes, it'll be a while. I just need to see like when the next one is so I can go to it. But
Right.
but last time I checked, Savannah here, they don't do a lot. It's a small town. There's not a lot of room for fashion shows. I basically would have to go to Atlanta for that kind of
Mm.
stuff, which is a long drive. But if I want to go check out more of these, I'm going to have to get out my comfort and drive 4 hours to
Yeah.
Atlanta to check out those fashion shows. But I just want to throw that away to see if you've seen any, but turns out you haven't seen any fashion shows at
No,
all.
no. But I see on the internet there's like resurgence in like I guess fresh modern takes on like historical pieces. Like I follow um like an Instagram account that focuses on like I think it's called Fashionable Filipinas. And it's like both historical and contemporary, like women's fashion with Filipino influence. And it's very cool. And I really love modern takes. And honestly, like, I really love this resurgence, not just for like that cultural, like the cultural positives of like representation and sort of reconnecting, but I just feel like the diversity of fashion options is just fun. Like it's fun. Like I was actually just thinking about this the other day and I was like, this is gonna sound so pretentious, but I'm like, wow, why does everyone wear t-shirts everywhere? Kind of want like more pizzazz, like just in our modern contemporary life. Like it would just be fun to see more variety. And I think, with a lot of this like contemporary rethinking of like cultural uh fashion, it allows fashion to evolve in a much more interesting way because then you just have more ways for different fashion streams to influence each other, if that makes sense. And yeah, but again, it's because I just want to live in a fantasy world. And I'm just like, yeah, let's all make our character designs much cooler and diverse. Like that's how storytelling pilled I am. I can only see the world through my storytelling lens.
And
Just
that's
like, let's
and,
have better character designs.
and that's all you can do. Well, shoot, I need to keep going to all these events so I can pay attention more. So I can like
Yeah,
just something. I'm just being more aware of my surroundings and just learning about stuff as I continue living.
sure.
Um, Next one, and then we'll be at the next section, okay? Now
Hmm.
you earned your BFA in studio art and drawing from the University of Hawaii at uh Manoa, if said this correctly.
Yes,
Um,
correct.
Before pursuing sequential art at SCAD. Now, what changed when you went from studying individual pieces of artwork to think about art as sequential storytelling?
Hmm. Well, I guess so. I'll preface this by saying when I got my bachelor's degree in Hawaii, I did want to focus on comics, but there is no comics or illustration program at the university. It's a conceptual art school, so it has a lot of traditional fine arts programs. And
Mm-hmm.
so because I couldn't do comics, I did other stuff, and I was in the drawing and painting program. Um, while I was there, I still wanted to do like narrative storytelling, but because I couldn't, I had to think outside the box and think of these ways to talk about the conceptual act of storytelling. It's very like heady, but I eventually my body of work was making these like large scale like drawing paintings that were made out of wood. And then it was like you interact with them, and then there was like world building happening inside of these like big drawings. And it was like, oh, the fictional world is coming into the real world. And it was like a conversation about, hey, this is how fiction influences the real world. Then after I graduated and I went into the sequential art program, the thing that changed was I was no longer trying to make people think about the concept of storytelling. And I was more just trying to tell them a story. And so I had much more control over things like characters and dialogue and themes. And because with like a singular piece of like art, like a painting, you can only hold their attention for, a certain amount of time. There's only a certain amount of content and like stuff that you can put in a painting. But in a comic, and what I was switching over to and what I had to change was how do I keep someone's attention over the course of many pages? And like, how do I use these techniques of comics to engage them every 5 seconds? That's a more fun challenge because then it feels more like having a conversation or, like a lecture where you are taking these active techniques to keep attention over a longer period of time. And I think personally, when you're able to do that, it can make the message one more nuanced and two stick with them more because they're spending more time with your work. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but
No,
that's
no,
sort of what changed in my mindset.
no,
And
no, no, no. It answered my question. Yeah, because I know all the schools that we've seen across, the globe, they don't. have everything that we need. This is the same that me telling some of the other people who do like voiceover and stuff. Like
Hmm.
some of those studios in different countries, then every like all the other countries. Like, could you? Okay, hold on. Let me get my thoughts because I'm about to get it pumped up here in a
Sure.
second. You have a lot of more people coming from different countries to pursue stuff like this and what you're doing because there's not a lot of places out there outside of the states and other countries that can offer all those things. And just like you said with Hawaii, they couldn't offer you guys any comic illustration majors or something
Hmm.
because they didn't have all the resources. Like they need to have all the resources in order for y'all to do
Right.
something. So but at least you made the most of it. You went to do fine arts. So
Yeah,
that's the
it was
so
great.
that
I loved it.
yeah, and it kind of went into like it went into what you wanted to do when you came to
Yeah.
SCAD to do like comics and stuff. So it goes hand in hand and with each other. You just it just let me say this. It will take time to get to where you want to be, but
Yeah.
first you gotta do the the boring stuff, the stuff that you don't want to do
Yeah.
first, and then you can
Yeah.
get to the fun stuff later. Something my
Yeah.
grandma taught
Well,
me.
yeah, no, and I think that's right. And honestly, like it's like every situation is the most that you can make out of it. So like even though I wanted to do comics from the get, or actually funny story, I actually wanted to do animation for my undergrad. And they're
Hmm.
like, all right, submit they actually do have an animation program at that school in Hawaii. And they're like, all right, submit a portfolio. And I was like, portfolio? I don't know how to do this. That's why I want to study.
Oh
So I
boy.
couldn't even apply. So I was like, you know what? I'll just go into fine art. Um, but making the most out of what you do have, like what situation you're in. So like I learned so much from that fine art program. And I feel like it taught me a lot of things that help me in comics in the future, which is discipline to like just sit and work and conceptual stuff like how to know what I want to say and to really think about what I'm trying to say, what I want to say with the story. And then you can take those lessons that you learn to carry over to other art forms and other like professional goals that you have. So, like even if you're not where you want to be, like where you're at and what you have access to can still be very helpful, in my experience.
You just gotta use what you can, use what you
Yeah.
can, and then the other stuff will come later. And I know it wasn't easy for you, Arya, when you had to deal with fine arts first.
It
But
wasn't
look,
so bad.
but yeah, but you made the most of it. Now, I mean, look what you're doing now.
So true. So true. I'm no hero. Uh,
Yeah. Well, you did the best way you could in an impossible situation.
sure. Yeah.
So, um, we're out of the first section. Okay, now we're in section two. So it's called Finding Her Artistic Voice. This is going to be a two-part question. Okay, I'm going to go as slow as
Okay.
I can so you can get everything. Now,
Okay.
artists sometimes spend years being influenced by other people's styles before
Mm-hmm.
discovering something that feels unmistakably their own.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a moment when you looked at something you created and thought, okay, this actually looks like me? Part two. You've worked
Mm-hmm.
across illustration, comics, murals, writing, and editing. Now, do those feel like separate creative muscles to you, or are they all different ways of accomplishing the same thing? Telling somebody a story.
Okay. So first question is, was there a moment when I looked at something and thought, this looks like me? Um, I I think it was in grad school in like 2019, um, where for an assignment, I created this like story idea called Push and Run, and it was influenced by like historical, like narratively, historically, aesthetically, it was influenced by Filipino culture and like the interplay of like, colonization from the US, from Spain, etc. And so it was a narrative that actually felt tied to something that I had a connection with, and probably for the first time. And visually, it again had like these characters that looked like me and like my family and people that I was like, I grew up around. And I was at a level where I was starting to become more confident in my art style without being derivative. So even though I did like drawing and making stuff and my previous works up to this point, they always felt a little derivative. Like I was still exploring like who am I? Like am I trying to be this? Am I trying to be that? Am I making a Star Wars knockoff? Am I making an Avatar: The Last Airbender knockoff? And so when I thought of this idea in class for an assignment, I was really happy with the pages I made for it. And then I continued working on this world and the series, and it just felt very me, where it's both culturally me. It felt like my art has reached a level where I was confident in it. It was fun. It was kind of dark. It was edgy. It was whimsical. Like it just felt like me on paper. And I still feel like this is a story that just feels like the most like me of many things that I've made even since. But that was a moment where I really felt confident, like, oh, I know how to draw. Like I know how to do a story. So I'm really thankful for that experience, being able to reach that level, you know?
Okay. And then
And oh, second part.
yeah, second part.
Okay, sorry. Second part is across these different types of art, is it the same muscles or are they different ways to tell a story? I would say they are different muscles. Like there is overlap, but you're telling people a story in a different way. Like I think with each different medium you're using, you are using a different methodology to get a message across. And the complexities of the message differ from the ability of that medium to hold attention. So like, a 250 page comic is going to have a different way of accessing a message to the viewer than like a mural. Um, because something like a mural or a singular illustration is like a picture tells a thousand words. Like you use this one singular image to convey this broader theme. But something like a comic, you really have to access these different muscles, such as like writing and characterization, because you're utilizing beyond the visuals to convey a more nuanced message via like taking the readers on a journey and using different like scenes and instances to tell different sides of this characterization and this story and this theme. Um, and different, I think different, mm, this is a very complicated topic. I'm like trying to think of the best way to phrase
Take it
this. But
take your
like,
time.
right, but it's like if you're able to, let's say, have a 250 page story, you can use things like pacing to guide the reader into learning about these ideas and say, oh, here's this situation where it's right, and here's a different situation where it's wrong. But here's a third situation that is very like, and you kind of are able to walk them through uh, different problems and help them learn these different perspectives. Um, Again, like it's the difference between maybe a really funny picture and like a stand-up comedy set. Like they all use these different ways of time and the ability to use certain levels of visual to convey an idea and to have a conversation in a way. And I just think that the different mediums, uh, I guess, have different aims. Like, are you trying to just get them thinking, or are you trying to tell them what your view is? Are you trying to convey a simple idea like war is bad, or is it like a complex idea like war is bad, but like if it's in, so like it's a whole thing. Like it really depends on the message, and you do need to use these different muscles. Like I don't think if you're good at conveying a message in an illustration or a mural, that doesn't necessarily mean you can like write a 2,000 page novel, because they're just different skills and they're both valid, but they are different.
Well, hey, if you don't have all the muscles together, all these senses together, it's not going to be a
Hmm.
perfect story. Like I've seen so many people make them say where it's like they think they got everything done on time, but they're missing a few secret spices to put into this
Sure.
artwork, and yeah, it's something that we really have to brainstorm about. It's like if I'm going to convey a message to the audience, what kind of message do I need to tell them about? Because if I
Hmm.
don't like listen, I don't post stuff on like all my other platforms without context first.
Hmm.
I've learned that from college. I just be posting and all that stuff.
Right, right.
But I was like, you know what? Let's try to do context going forward. So you gotta make sure you have a lot of context to back up what you're trying to tell. Otherwise, the audience won't be as very interested. And going back to the first one, sometimes, if I can combine this to with this type of situation, sometimes you have to look at all the other artists' work and be like, okay, I've seen what they've done. Now, what exactly am I trying to do to incorporate
Yeah,
my masterpiece and know exactly what I'm going for? It's something you got to think about.
sure, sure. Yeah. And just, utilizing the right medium for the different message that you want to convey and thinking about like what medium is the best to convey this. Like I always think about how we have to use art and like, fiction or nonfiction
Hmm.
in specific ways because it's like there is a strength to using art to say a message because you think about it and it's like, okay, what's the difference between writing a story with a message and just telling someone the message? Like if you're just like, war is bad, does the person hearing you internalize that? Probably not. But if you write this like beautiful story where you like attach to the characters and you take them through this thing, maybe that conveys that war is bad. Or there's like a really powerful mural or illustration or photograph that again shows why war is bad. It's like you really need to utilize these techniques in each different medium to convey the message as effectively as possible in, I guess, the allotted time that you have that the person will spend with the message. Because you're really trying to convince people of a point of view, right? Or at least get them thinking about a point of view, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. And speaking of that, that actually goes into the next question I'm about to tell you about. Man, I should have just made this a three-part
Sure.
question. It's okay though. Oh,
It's okay. I
now
need the break. I need the break to think.
yeah, it's fine. Now, one thing people don't always see behind finished artwork is the pile of sketches. We've seen that before. Revisions, abandoned ideas, and outright failures that came before it. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. Because we all had to like figure out, okay, this one leads to the same conclusion. It's not gonna work. Um, what's something a project that didn't work taught you that one of your successful projects couldn't?
Well, when you say a project that didn't work, do you mean something that like I just never got off the ground, or do you mean something that I like finished and I was like, man, this sucks?
Yes, yeah, but actually pretty much all of the above.
Okay. Um, yeah, I think honestly, maybe in both instances, I guess what I learn on things that I feel like aren't successful or aren't something that I want to take further, it usually is something where like I feel like it's not actually something that I'm interested in. Like I think a lot of my journey in comics is trying to figure out what kind of stories I want to tell. And there's a difference between the stories that you like and the stories that you want to tell, and perhaps even the stories you're good at telling. But I really enjoy these like cerebral sort of like uh I don't know how to describe them, but sort of like, oh, like thought exercises of like morality, like, oh, wouldn't it be messed up if this and that? Like, I guess maybe almost like a Black Mirror episode. But I tried to write stuff like that, and they're so like I found that I was so not interested in them because they were very like they're very conceptual and very like in intellectual in a way. And what I found was that I honestly don't care about telling stories like that. Like I feel like what I found is I like stories that are fun in some kind of way, and I like stories that are very character centric, like human being emotional centric. Like character studies are fun, flawed characters are fun, but like these kind of like thought exercise stuff that's sort of like, wouldn't it be weird if this? Like, I feel like I when I made those stories, I just didn't feel like I was particularly passionate about them. And I think it shows. I think it shows because it just feels like a story rather than something that felt like, oh, this is why this is fun, or this is why someone would like this story. It just felt like I was like, oh, wouldn't it be crazy if a nice guy was a serial killer? Like, like it was very like, oh yeah, cool, I guess. And then like the art wasn't as inspired because again, I wasn't really rooted in being passionate about this concept. It was just something that I was like, oh yeah, that's an interesting idea, but my heart wasn't in it. So as far as failed projects go, uh, I would say that like I really needed to have like some kind of attachment to the story, like emotionally. Like who is this tragic or girl failure that I'm trying to like write? What is this concept that I think would be fun? What is the situation that I think would be fun? Because even if it's a darker story, I do think there is enjoyment of reading stuff like that. And in the things that I didn't find successful that I've done or wanted to do, it didn't really have that. It didn't really have an aspect of fun or play in it. It just felt very dry and sad. And
Yeah.
I don't like my work to be like that, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, I understand. I understand. And sometimes we do. And listen, you know, we're gonna make mistakes. It's inevitable. That's one thing I do
Sure.
know. And it's sometimes we're gonna have those like dark days where it's like, oh shoot, I can't do this anymore. What's the point of all this? And that is a really good question. What is the point of all this? Sometimes throughout these projects and stuff that we like to do in our careers, we come at a
Mhm.
crossroads, and it's like we're this far in life, and it's like, what am I doing this for? Like, am I doing this for
Yeah.
myself? Am I doing this for somebody else? And it's something to consider, and that's really like a very deep section to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is very important to understand why you're doing something because if you don't know, and I mean, I guess you don't have to know this right off the bat, but if you don't know what's driving you, then like if you keep putting your eggs in the basket that doesn't drive you, you're just going to be like, man, this sucks. I'm burnt out because you're not getting the satisfaction of um, doing something for a reason that you like, right?
Mhm. And I think for us, we continue to do the artwork because we got no other choice. And I
Yeah,
was because when I started this whole thing, I was like, well, I can't sit on my hands and do nothing.
sure,
I can't
sure.
just I can't wait for something to happen. And I think you already
Hmm.
know this too, Aria. Like you can't
Yeah,
sit on your hands and do nothing. You got to do something.
yeah, yeah. You have to, a friend of mine calls it exercising some demons, where you have to like
Yes.
get it out of yourself. Because you have to. It's like you actually, I heard this interesting quote, which is that like, well, there's a few, and I do believe this, even if I don't always follow it, but it's like creating more than you consume. And like overthinkers should be over creators because that's how you kind of get like those things just sitting in your head with no way out makes you crazy. Like you have to get your creativity out, or else it's going to be bottled up and you're just going to feel like very like you're not expressing yourself and you're not achieving what you want and you're not working towards anything because it's just sitting there like a boiling pot.
Yes, you can't just sit on there just wait for it to explode. You gotta come on, you gotta let it out. You gotta do it. But yeah, and I know, and going back to you, because I know and the reason why I brought up is because that's like I kind of figure she might have done some projects that just didn't stick. And it's like I
Yeah.
have to come up with something else to make sure that I enjoy it. Because listen, if you do it and it's like I don't think I did a good job on this, and you send out
Yeah.
anyway, you won't feel happy. You won't feel satisfied at all. The main
No,
point
no.
is when you do something, you gotta make sure you're happy with the final project.
Or, and I even would go beyond that and say that even if you're not happy with it, like kind of seeing it in like the broader scheme of things, like, okay, I'm not super happy, but I learned from this. Like I was able to learn because I think that's a big thing is like being able to take away things from failure and from finishing, from completion. Like you can only succeed if you fail, right? And understanding that each project might not turn out how you want, but you can still learn from it. It's still a part of your growth. You still like things about it. Like there are some early projects that I did where I read them now and I'm like, this sucks, but I'm like super happy with, you know, putting my heart on the line, even though it's terrible and cringe as hell because I was 17. But I was like, but I was able to convey an emotion that was inside of me, right? Like it didn't have to be perfect, it just needed to be out there.
Yeah, it didn't need to be perfect, but it was sometimes it'd be like, it ain't pretty, but we're doing this.
Exactly. Exactly.
So gotta keep that in mind. Now that we're out of that section, we're in section three, comics collaboration and in the Shadow Giants.
Mm,
So let's go ahead and start with this. I got another two-part question for you.
sure.
Okay. So now you help create In the Shadow of Giants,
Hmm.
which explores Filipino-American history and the experiences of Filipino veterans during World War II, correct?
Yep. You did your
Now,
research.
hey, I come with receipts. I make sure to do
Yes, I
everything.
love it. Love it.
Now, what responsibility did you feel illustrating a story connecting not just to history, but to real people's experiences and sacrifices? Part two, when you're illustrating history, how do you balance being historically respectful with still allowing yourself the creative freedom necessary to make a compelling comic?
Hmm. These are good questions. And I think if we're talking about like what responsibility did I have and how did I balance being respectful and having creative freedom, I feel like those kind of go together. I guess it is a two-part question, but I might answer them together
Yeah, take your time.
in the sense, yeah, no, in the sense that I feel like it is a bit of a heavy topic. So this graphic novel was supported by a nonprofit called the Filipino Veterans Recognition and Education Project. And they are, a nonprofit that focuses on like historically like educating people on the the story of Filipinos and the Philippines in, from basically when they interacted with America, which was the Filipino-American War around the turn of the 19th century. And then, the complicated relationship from then on when it was a territory up until World War II and how it was occupied by Japan up until the modern day. And so it was a very important historical project. And I felt responsibility to make something, first of all, good and second of all, accurate because like it involved so many people that were like still, they're still alive today. This is a very like important project to get right for people to then read and understand the importance of this culturally and how it's still being dealt with today. So the responsibility was really about accuracy, and we had a lot of like references um, and resources to make sure that we were accurate as possible. And we had like a lot of people checking. My writer, Matthew Fisher, is the one who was kind of heading a lot of this stuff, and a lot of people we worked with were really focused on kind of checking my work and making sure it was accurate. So I'm very thankful for them. Um, but with creative freedom and real people's experience and such, I think there was a balance between being, dramatic and honest to the hardships of what happened, but also making it human and accessible for its target audience. So this graphic novel was intended to be a way for like using comics as a medium to teach young people about their history. So like kids in high school, I think particularly Filipino-Americans and folks that are just not familiar with the Philippines in general and the Philippines' role in the US's history and such. And so my point of view is that for a young audience, particularly like a young audience today, you really need to be able to cut through the dryness of a lot of historical material because it can be very like dense and dry to talk about these really heavy historical topics. Because if it wasn't an issue, then this book wouldn't necessarily be necessary because you'd just be like, read a book. And in order to make it accessible, I really in the writing process and the creative process, I was really prizing a way to have these characters be characters that the readers could identify with and using storytelling techniques that were engaging to that particular audience. So, like the kids nowadays, they like graphic novels, they like manga. And so I really tried my best to incorporate these techniques, particularly from manga, to, I don't want to sound too repetitive, but to make it accessible to them using heightened emotion and using certain types of like panel compositions to convey emotion in a language that they're pretty familiar with. Because if you just draw a comic that doesn't seek to meet them where they are and like what kinds of like visual tropes and visual language that they're familiar with, I feel like it's going to be hard to get them on board, right? Because it's going to be too too alien to them or too dry or too boring. So I really felt that it was important to take creative freedom in the way that I told the story that still felt young, but didn't take away from the what's the word? Take away from the importance of the topic. Like I didn't want to make it a joke, but there still needed to be like levity. There still needed to be like human, like there still needed to, it needed to be cute. It needed to be fun. It needed to be heavy. It needed to do all of these things in order to, in my opinion, access a younger generation and be able to teach them through this like mode of entertainment and art, their history. Does that all make sense? I feel like
No,
I rambled for a bit.
no. It's okay. Ramble, please ramble. Yes, it makes sense. It makes sense because I know. Let me say this also, Arya. And I like that you said all that because today in our world, kids are exposed to a lot of like things, and we have to do our best to try to convey that in the most positive way we can. Because I know there's a lot of stuff that out there in the world that's kind of graphic and it's
Mm-hmm.
not really mature. So you and your team had to figure out how can we like make this a fun comic so we could teach them in a fun way about their history without trying to bring like, oh, well, this is the reality of the situation today. Because as far as like the social media goes, they get exposed to like so much like negativity and like graphic stuff that's not age appropriate. And you guys are trying to make it age appropriate. Because I know you're used to making mature comics, but you decided to take a different approach with some of these projects. Let's make it a little bit more age appropriate for kids so they can learn without all the negativity and the backlash. Because you know how parents are these days, and we
Sure.
want to make sure that they get exposed to the positive stuff instead of all the
Mm-hmm.
bad and mature graphic stuff that you see on
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah. And it's like you also like need to think about, and it kind of goes to our conversation earlier about like what are the different types of art, what different creative muscles do you use? And you think, okay, what can they get out of this book that they couldn't get out of a documentary or like a textbook, right? And it's like it's using it to create like, and again, like I hate using this word in this context, but I feel like it's true because I don't want it to diminish the like the weight of what it's conveying, but like an entertainment almost to make it accessible, to make it fun to learn almost, or make it at least enjoyable to be able to intake these nuances and these historical contexts. So the way that we did that was by using like characters that are both in the modern day and in the historical day during World War II, being teenagers. So like the problems that they face are things that the target audience can relate to. And then using things like my art style in particular being something that is influenced by manga. It's colorful. So again, it kind of makes it potentially easier to get into, more fun to read visually. And then using like manga techniques and some not tropes, but like certain like pacing and delivery to again make it as engaging as possible to the audience so that they can get this important message that is still the same message that they could have gotten from reading like a 200-page textbook, but it might be an easier way for them to um, have an introduction to that material. And then from here, if they have an interest, then they can go on to these denser, primary sources or secondary sources and textbooks and documentaries and just know and have conversations with their families.
Yeah, because
Yes.
because I know with a lot of stuff, because there are hints of the stuff that we don't like, because I've seen so many TV shows with history stuff, they cut out so much stuff because they don't want kids to get exposed to this kind of stuff because there's just been a history of like the stereotyping and stuff. If I can give you a few examples right quick, take
Sure.
because I seen a post about this. I'm trying to make sure I'm trying to keep it light. There was a few scenes that you seen back in the day, like in the early 1930s and everything, with
Hmm.
cartoons like Tom and Jerry and
Yeah.
Looney Tunes. There's like blatant hints of racism going on with
Oh,
stereotyping
sure,
other
sure.
races. One example is okay, let me give you an example. In some of the Tom and Jerry episodes, there was like hints of people used doing blackface.
Yeah.
Like Tom and Jerry using blackface and all that other stuff. And to be honest, I didn't know that part because thing is, when I was a kid, my dad didn't teach me much about because he didn't want me to be like, know what this is about
Hmm.
until I was at a certain age. So there was like because I think what happened was, and there's this guy who did a video about this because apparently Cartoon Network cut out all those stuff because it's just being racist because
Right.
those are like the Forbidden 12 scenes. Same thing with Looney Tunes. You have like all these stereotyping with like Bugs Bunny was in blackface because he was trying to fool Yosemite Sam in that episode called Mississippi Hair or whatever it's called. But yeah,
Hmm.
us as responsible adults, we have to try to I'm trying to gather my thoughts. We have to try to go slowly and educate younger kids because more kids are being exposed to more media these days safely without them having to experience this kind of stuff and be like, hey, what's this all about kind of thing. We just want to make sure like, hey, let's try to educate them and then until like we don't want to show them this kind of stuff until they get to a certain age.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think with In the Shadow of Giants, it wasn't necessarily so much that because I think it does touch on really heavy topics because like the target audience is sort of like 16, 17-year-olds and they can
Yeah.
handle a lot of stuff. I think it's more of like with when you're a teenager, as a former teenager myself, it's kind of hard to get attention, like it's hard to get your attention on like serious topics in a lot of ways. Um, because it can feel like dry, boring, and so separate from you, right? Like there's so many things you learn as an adult that you really just didn't care about as a kid.
Hmm.
And so this graphic novel, the storytelling style, the art style, it was all, I think it's a way for us to give an introduction to those heavier topics and perhaps start an interest, um, that I think maybe something that felt too mature or too dry or too cerebral might just not activate their interest because they're young. Like I just don't think it's easy to just capture a young person's attention when the thing that's very heavy is so separated from them. It's like you really need to convince kids and also people in general to care about things. Like that's what art is, right? You're really trying to convince people to care about things through narrative, through themes, through education, through visuals. You're trying to convince them of an idea. So that is the
Hmm.
creative freedom that we had to take in making like a narrative story that was exciting and emotional and catered towards a slightly younger, like young adult crowd to be the vehicle for these important historical facts, these themes, and these broader important messages.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think that's important. And yeah, we just gotta do the best we can because I know, and like I said before, they may not be ready. We need to make sure this doesn't feel like, oh shoot, I wasn't prepared for this and everything, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
And especially when you're dealing with younger audiences, especially with kids in like kindergarten and preschool kind of thing.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, I think different age groups definitely have different means. And there's always going to be exceptions to this rule. Like I'm sure like there are 16-year-olds who just love, Dostoevsky and stuff, but I try to think about like how can you make it accessible to I think about how I was in high school and I was um like I was not the most studious learner and I think something like this would have been helpful for me to learn about to give weight to these heavier topics. Um, so that's what I hope that it would do.
Right, right. Let's go into the next question. Now you're also a part of the Utah Comics Collective, right?
Yes, Uta.
Now,
Yes, it is a Filipino word.
yeah, almost had it. Um,
It's okay.
where
Everyone mispronounces it.
Yeah, where creators have challenged themselves to produce short comics under tight deadlines. Now, what happens
Yes.
to your creativity when you don't have the luxury of endlessly perfecting something?
Mm. Well, I think this is like a yearly thing that we do. It started in 2021, and we're currently working on our fifth volume. Every year we do this, and we've expanded the group. But well, I guess let me take you back to 2021. Um, After I think in my last year of school, or right after I graduated, I was working full time as an editor. But you know what I wasn't doing? I wasn't making comics, and that upset me greatly. And I was hanging out with my three friends, and we were in an Airbnb in Atlanta. And I was kind of like, me and my other friend were kind of like whinging about this. We are like, man, this sucks. Life is so hard. We can't make comics. And so my friend Danny, was like, you know what we need to do? We need to force you guys to make comics. Uh, so we made this challenge that was like, okay, if if you we're all gonna make a 6-page comic in 2 weeks, and if you're the last one to finish, you have to buy everyone dinner. And like, keep in mind, this is like $100. So I almost cried. I was like, no one understands me. I am the only one here with a full-time job. Like, it's so hard to make comics. And my friend was like, oh, okay, okay, all right. If you don't finish, then you have to buy everyone dinner. If you do finish, then, there's no punishment. And so we started this challenge. And it was so hard for me because I was so like, oh, it has to be perfect. It has to be so good. It has to be so important. And it wasn't. And I finished it and I felt so good. I made the 6-page comic in 2 weeks and I felt so good because it was fun. It was funny. I was able to talk about this thing that was on my mind, which is again, I was just missing my friends from high school and I was nostalgic. So I made a comic about it. And I think a lot of people think that if you make something quickly under a deadline and you can't perfect it, then it's just not going to be as good as you want it to be. But I actually think what I learned each time doing this, and I have made now 8 stories, 9 stories, something like that, 9 stories across 5 years. And what I've learned from this is it actually activates your creativity because art is just creative problem solving. And if you're on a time limit and you actually believe in the time limit and you actually finish something, what you do is you invent creative ways to get this done, which is the whole point of this challenge is how do you create with the time that you have? Because it's easy to say, hey, look, I want to make in my life a 5,000 page comic and I want to spend 20 hours on one page every, like, how does the math check out there? So it's about finding within yourself, like you got 5 hours a week, you got 10 hours a week, you got 20 hours a week to work. In that amount of time you have, what can you make? And then you just make it. Like you wanna live Moss and go out every day and you only have 5 hours a week to make this thing, then draw stick figures. And then make that stick figure comic good. Make it entertaining. How? Okay, now you are forced to think about these creative solutions rather than just being like, okay, why 5 hours? And I'm not going to make any compromises. The result of that is that your comic just doesn't get done. And you have the best story in the world in your head that no one reads. It's like, congratulations. So, what I've learned from this is that your creativity actually flourishes because you are forced under pressure to find solutions that surprise you. And then you apply that when you have more time. Then you apply it to your future projects where you do want to perfect it. Then you realize what you want to tell stories about. Like I've learned so much from these short stories because I was forced to make them. And if I had no deadline, I just wouldn't have made them. And that's the end of the story. Like, those people who just like they just find the power within themselves to do whatever it takes. I am not one of those people. I need a deadline for real. And it forces me out of my comfort zone because I can make so many excuses in the world to not do something that having this deadline and accountability with other people who also have that same deadline forces me to create and forces me to surprise myself if I don't want to, for example, buy everyone dinner, you know? And then you feel good. It creates a chain reaction where you gain confidence that you wouldn't have gained if you were perfecting one story that you never finish. Like you make a bunch of stories that are bad, kind of good, great, amazing. You build experience. And that is, you can't do anything to trade that, you know? You want to make comics, you got to make comics.
And those deadlines can be stressful, but I think it's a form of discipline. Like,
Yes.
us as us, us as independent content creators, we got to, because and I also spoke with a few of the other people saying like, we as people, we have to discipline ourselves to make sure we
Yes.
can get this thing done. Like shoot, we got our own thing. We're free to do whatever we want. We're at home doing our
Mhm.
own home studios and whatnot. And listen, I'm in my own office doing this. But we
Yeah.
got to discipline on ourselves. Even though we're at home working, we still got stuff to do. Like shoot, I guarantee you there's a
Yeah.
lot more people like you doing artwork at home and then people doing like online work for different companies or creating stuff for other companies
Mhm.
and we're inside the cover of our homes, but we have to discipline ourselves. And even if it
Yeah.
means like, hey, if I don't do this, I have to pay $200. Think
Yeah.
of it,
I
think of
mean,
it like
that's what
that.
we did.
That that's what there you go. That's an example.
Yeah.
Or
And
I have to clean everybody's cars for a bit. Just a few
yes.
examples.
Well, our current challenge is if we don't finish, we have to do an embarrassing TikTok dance. So I don't want to do that. So um
Ooh, don't do it. Don't
yeah.
do it.
Yeah. And yeah, I think at least for me and for the way that I work, it's like being forced to practice making comics is important to get experience in making comics like as a whole. Like you do practice drawing, but you also have to practice paneling, you have to practice writing, character work, and these are things that you can't just practice without making comics. It's the way that I think about I always think about I don't know how people take this metaphor, but I always think about drawing like basketball. And
Mhm.
it's like, if your friend is like, hey, do you want to play a game of basketball? You're not like, hold on, let me practice for 5 years and then we'll play our game. You know? Like, you don't wait to get good at basketball. Like, you don't practice alone playing basketball before you go play basketball. Like, you get better by playing basketball. So the way that I kind of see all of these like comics that I'm doing is like practicing basketball at like you know, the local basketball court or gym and not and then you do that to get better enough to I guess audition for a pro basketball or like however people get drafted. But you have to practice outside of the professional leagues. You can't just walk into the professional leagues. So that's how I kind of view this. I kind of view it as ways to practice getting better without just practicing drawing. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Practice makes perfect. Same with these deadlines. I
Yes.
think I think once you get used to it, it really doesn't phase you as much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I respect people who can just practice on their own and then just churn out comics and can spend their time. Like I really do respect them and they do make great comics. I just cannot do that. And I really need force to get me into making these comics and creating that momentum that is what I ride to create as many pages as I do.
yeah, of course. Um, well, up next, we're in the next section. We're getting close to the end. Before we continue, are you enjoying our discussion here?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, these are great questions. I
I
hope
do.
the listeners are enjoying it as much as I'm enjoying answering it.
Yeah, sorry you've been seeing me yawn a lot. I never took a nap, so
Oh
I'm
no.
kind of getting my second one because I was like, I ain't gonna let this defeat me.
Sure.
So
Yes.
I'm good.
Stay strong. I gotta turn up my entertainment value by like two, so I'll just keep you awake.
Oh,
But
wait. You have to turn down your entertainment by two.
no, I'm turning it up. I'm gonna entertain you so you're not tired.
Oh no. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. Yeah, y'all don't
All
pay
right, let's
attention
go.
to me.
Round
I'll make
two,
it.
section
Yes,
three, four,
section four. Section four.
section four. Let's go. We're in the end game now.
Yeah. So behind the curtain at Webtoon,
Sure.
because I didn't know you were working with Webtoon.
Oh yeah. Well,
Shoot, I've been seeing
I am not working with Webtoon. I was working with Webtoon.
you was. Why'd you stop?
Uh, in January, I received a message that I was laid off, and that's why I stopped. It happens when you work for a business. But yeah, I was at Webtoon for 5.5 years. Um, yeah, what
Okay.
happens.
Well, I don't mean to open old wounds then.
No, it's totally fine. I mean, it was a huge part of my career. It was my first professional foray into comics and like the administrative side. And I learned a lot. I've made so many good connections, a lot of good experiences, worked on wonderful, wonderful stories that like, you know, it was such a formative part of my career.
I understand. I understand. Well, as long as you're happy with it, then I'm not going
Oh,
to stop you. Um,
yeah.
you've entered.
Sorry. Did I just lag a little bit?
No. You didn't
Oh,
lag.
am I back?
Yeah,
Okay,
you're fine.
great,
You're
great.
fine. Now, you've entered Webtoon as an intern and eventually became a managing editor. When you first walked into that world, what
Yeah.
did you misunderstand about how professional webcomics were actually made? Part two. As an editor,
Hmm.
you've worked alongside creators behind the series like School Bus Graveyard, Of Swamp and Sea, Nomads, and
Hmm.
Sable Curse. How do you help a creator improve the story without accidentally turning their story into the story you would have written?
Sure. So I guess the first question about what did I misunderstand about how they're made? I guess it wasn't so much a misunderstanding as like I just didn't have a frame of reference because it's so like it's a very opaque process about how and what editorial is and how it works. Um, because in these different fields, the role of the editor can be quite different. Like, like a book editor might be different from like a manga editor, who's different from a graphic novel editor, uh, and is different from a webtoon editor. So I think I just didn't know necessarily what it entailed. And I think the biggest thing, and this kind of ties into the next one, is a misunderstanding of like how the role of the editor is, like how much control is an editor supposed to have. Because you hear from like these different sources and different fields of comics how editorial works. And because webtoon wasn't a one-to-one, I didn't really know what was my purview and like how to exercise whatever influence I was supposed to have. Like, for example, like an editor at Shonen Jump, based on what I read, might be able to be like, no, you're not doing this. Right. Like, or that's dumb. Like, I think I read a story where in Naruto, I think Kishimoto wanted to have the third Hokage be a dog, if I'm remembering correctly. And the editorial team was like, no. And I think I also read, listeners, please fact check me on this. I believe the Chunin exams were an editorial idea. And so that is a huge amount of influence for an editor to have on a story. And then in other instances, I feel like I've heard that editors should not have any influence and should just be there to like kind of make sure things aren't problematic and that's it. So part of my journey was having to learn, and there's different levels that you can have with different creatives, but learning where that line is. And what I ended up learning is that you basically have to think about what what is the creator's vision, how do they want this story to be taken by readers, and is what are they doing like effective in that. And you're acting as like this beta reader, and you're trying to find this balance between the creator's vision and the reception. Because I think some people think like, well, you don't have to think about the audience at all. And it's like, yes and no. Like there are instances where you shouldn't cave to fan pressure, but I think you also need to think about like what you ultimately want this story to be, right? Like how long do you want it to go for? What is the best way to maintain longevity? What is the best way to tell a story? Is your vision a good story? Like the answer is not always yes. Um, and like I think the ultimate thing is like, what do you want to impart to readers and what is the best way to convey that? So that goes into the second question, which is how do I help them improve without turning it into a story that I would have written? And I feel like I was pretty good about this. If there are any creators I worked with listening that are like, no, Aria really overstepped, please email me. Please let me know. I would love to
Oh,
know and
oh, Lord.
apologize. But I think it was fine because I feel like I have a great relationship with all the creators I've worked with. And what I felt like I was pretty cognizant of is offering things as suggestions and offering like counterpoints. So it's basically like there are ideas where I'm like, oh, it would be great if this happened. But I think it's about framing those ideas of like, here's what I would do, or here's what I think is an option. Is this something that seems good to you? Does it not seem good to you? And sometimes they'll be like, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And they'll take the idea as I said it. Sometimes they're like, no, that's not my vision. And like, I don't really push it unless I feel like what they've kind of have planned might not be the best thing to convey the ultimate message. Like, let's say, for example, they're like, oh, well, I really want them to feel this theme. So I want to do this. I might say, well, as a reader, I just feel really mad. And I feel like I'm not taking away the message from that. I'm not interpreting that message that way. Or I'm bored. So by being bored, I'm going to drop the series and I'm just not going to get the message. So then the question is, okay, I don't like your idea. You don't like my idea. So then we talk about like, okay, what is the solution? And it kind of creates this conversation that creates a better idea. Um, because I think if you just fully go in with your vision and don't listen to anything, you don't necessarily need an editor. And to be honest, some people don't, but a lot of people do. And it's because when you get so in your head about the vision that you've spent with yourself, you misunderstand how an audience that doesn't have all that information will take a story and understand it. Like, so an editor's job is to kind of present both sides, preserving the vision, but also preserving their goals. And if their goal is to just be a pure artistic vision that doesn't compromise, great. Don't listen to me. But if you want to make your idea understandable, if you want your story to be clear, if you want this character arc to be emotionally impactful, if you want this pacing to be good, then here are some suggestions, you know? And ultimately, part of a job of an editor is also knowing when to back off.
Mhm.
Like, I might be in my head, like, okay, I still don't agree with this, but it is your story. And sometimes I'm proven right, and sometimes I'm proven wrong. And that's just how the creative process goes, right? Not everyone is going to be right all the time. No one has the magic answers. Otherwise, every story would just be a success every time. And it's not because there's so many factors that come into play. But my role is to be collaborative, not to steamroll anyone with my vision. Like that's something I tried to keep in mind from the forefront as a creator
Yeah.
myself.
And we all want to listen to everybody's ideas. The main thing of when you're doing a project, sometimes, when someone's being the lead of a project, sometimes, it's always knowing, maybe learning when to follow others
Yeah.
and understand where they're coming from. Because they might have something that you may not realize until you
Mhm.
like bring them into that space where it's like, hey, let me see what I can do for a second here and see if this works. And
Yeah.
let me tell me and let me know what you think.
Yeah. No, I think that is exactly right. Like what an editor brings, like, and anyone can have an opinion, right? A reader can have an opinion and they might have a correct opinion and they might have great ideas. But what an editor brings is both, hopefully, good ideas and good opinions, but also experience in seeing how things play out. So, like having worked on multiple stories, seeing how readers take things, seeing how, I guess you can even say, like how sales are impacted by certain story decisions, how certain moments kind of play what is popular, what is a trend, what to follow, what not to follow, when to stick to your guns, and like how to convey these things to creators who are very emotionally tied to their works and also oftentimes is their first professional work. That's where an editor brings in experience to show these different perspectives and be like, look, I know you want to do this, but I worked on this one story one time that did exactly this and it was a shit show. Like readers hated this. Um, a bad ending can ruin a whole comic. So that's when you can be like, hey, maybe we make this ending feel a little more upbeat, and that's not to say like to pander, and it's not to say like to screen test, but it's to consider is like hard questions. Is your pure unadulterated vision more important than the potential to alienate your whole audience, right? Like,
Right.
is or is your desire to keep this story going as long as possible, is that a bad decision where you then run the risk of tiring your audience because of how long and, you know, uh, the pacing is not working for people? It's about having these conversations with ideally experience to back it up and say, yeah, I've seen this before.
Mm.
And that's what I would bring as an editor that some random reader maybe wouldn't because they don't have the same access to information. They're kind of seeing it just from a reader perspective, but I can see it from a reader and a creator and a admin perspective working for a company. And you kind of use that to make an educated guess on what could work and could not work. And you know what? Maybe everyone doesn't agree with me, um, but might just be like, yeah, everyone should just do full on creative vision with no compromises. I just don't think that is the best. Otherwise, you would never ask your friends to review your work and give you advice because you'd always be right. Um, I just think there's a lot to learn from other people's perspectives, but you also need to know your skill in saying no and knowing when to, be humble enough to take feedback and when to not be a
But
pushover about your vision. Yeah.
Yeah, and not like to let your pride take over you.
Yes. Yes.
Mm. All right. Well, on to the next one, because like you said, you stopped working at Webtoon after they got you laid
Yeah.
off. Section 5 is about choosing yourself and what's next.
Sure.
So after roughly 5.5 years with Webtoon, you decide to move into a new chapter and focus more heavily on yourself as an artist and writer. Now, what made you
Mhm.
realize, okay, it's time for me to create my own next chapter?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think part of it is just having time now that I didn't before. Like I was still making comics throughout my entire time as an editor, but having like not having a full-time job, like, I'm still open to like freelance and other side projects, but there's something different and conventions, of course, but there's something about not necessarily having the responsibility on a day-to-day basis that freed up my mind to explore these things. And even if it doesn't turn into like full-on professional opportunities, just as an artist, I wanted to use this time to sit with ideas without feeling like I was doing it like after work. Like that can be tiring. It can contribute to burnout. And I think it did. But it's like thinking about what I want from my art, what stories do I want to tell, having more time to practice. Like I was just talking about like, don't practice drawing instead of making comics. But like now I had the time where I was like, okay, I'm going to practice some drawing. I'm going to do some perspective things. I'm going to improve these certain visual aspects to my art. Like I'm going to pitch, I'm going to do that. And it was really just having the time, like not hopefully layoffs aren't common in someone's life, but when you are laid off, it is sort of like the universe forcing you to reckon with your career and time. And so I was like, look, I might not get another opportunity to have this sort of like time to recharge because I might just, start the next job and just never stop. So I will utilize this time to creatively recharge, you know,
Yeah.
and see where it goes.
hmm And sometimes, because I know with sometimes these companies they will lay off entire employees, but
Yeah.
I think independent art and independent media is coming more important than ever now because you got so many of these companies who are just getting rid of employees that they don't need anymore, and it's like, well, shit, we got to do something that's gonna make us successful now because
Yeah.
we are very talented people,
Of
Araya,
course.
so we gotta do our own and do our own successes, make our own like successful businesses because it's gonna be
Yes.
like very useful later.
For sure. For sure. And there's always going to be a need for independent art that isn't beholden to, uh, companies. Like there's value in the work that companies make and artists that can create with companies. But I think indie work also allows a certain type of freedom to express things that touch our hearts, like move us, inspire us. And again, other companies and the works that artists create for companies can do the same, but indie allows sort of, at least from my experience, working for a company, it allows less pressure to like make money or go on for a long time, stuff like that.
hmm Yeah, of course. So, yeah, independence is working. You seem to be in a good position, so you're still making
I think
stuff.
so. Yeah,
So,
I think so.
I know you still got a good support system as well. I mean, I'm supporting you as well. I'm
Yes, thank you.
trying to get your stuff. That's why we're having this discussion here. See if I can get,
Thank you. Yeah, and I
helps.
hope I hope my thoughts are helpful to people, like yeah,
I believe
I
they
can be a
are.
support to them.
There you go. It works. It's working.
Yeah.
Now next one. Oh, you're gonna like this one. Okay, you're gonna like this one. Now, there's an interesting reversal there. You spent years helping other creators develop their worlds, characters, and careers. Now that you're putting
Hmm.
more energy into Aria, the creator, which is you,
Hmm.
what's the hardest piece of advice you've given to other artists that you now have to follow yourself?
Mm. Well, I learned something through this whole thing, which is that I'm a huge hypocrite. Like the advice that I give is quite it's quite simple, but now being in a position where I'm like spending most of my time like trying to make art, it is difficult. And it's like, I think the hardest piece of, well, there's two pieces of advice that I would say that I pretty commonly gave, um, that is hard to follow now. The first one is just simply trying to stay on deadline. So when we're talking about my Utut challenge earlier with my friends, that one is a yearly thing, and we give like 2 weeks a month. You know, it's a yearly thing, so it's easy to make the deadline. But now working on my own thing, so I work on a story called Paint Nothing, which is like it's not quite serialized, but I work on it and release it on a chapter by chapter basis. And I thought that I would, since I had all this time, that I would just be able to crank this out on the regular. You know, I'm not really thinking about a day job for the time being. So I could work on just comics, right? I'll just be a comic artist. Turns out it's actually pretty hard.
Mm,
Um, it's not necessarily hard to just make a comic, but I think it's hard to consistently make comics like on a weekly basis. And I really thought that because I was able to make these comics after work, that it would be quite easy to just do what I've been doing. But when you have like a whole open day ahead of you, it's actually kind of hard because you don't have structure anymore. You don't have an accountability. Um, I used to draw things from like 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. after work.
mm,
And now if I don't have work, then I'm just like, yeah, I'll draw whenever. And then I just don't, you know, or another bit of advice that I would often give creators. And again, to creators listening, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I still think this is good advice, but I think I'm learning that it's harder to follow. Um, is like when marketing yourself, just being like, yeah, just make an illustration once a week, or just just start a Patreon or start a Substack or start like do Instagram reels. Like I kind of gave this advice, which I still stand by, to build an audience that then can support your work. But I'm finding it's just so hard to find the inspiration to do that, to just know where to start. Because you have to do this research. Like if you want to make YouTube videos, if you want to make reels, okay, not only do you have to make the content, you have to learn how to use the programs. How do you use CapCut? How do you use Final Cut? How do you think of things every day on top of making your comic? Like I've been trying to make an online store for like 3 months now, and I just can't, like it's so hard to just get it out. Like I have the account ready, but it's just like there's so
hard to
many
get it
small
out
things
there.
that you don't keep. Yeah, it's so many small things to think about that you have to consistently be on for. That now that I'm in the position where I want to do that, it's just so hard to do it without, I guess, an immediate support system of someone telling you like do this. Um, and like if you have too much free time, I think it's hard to feel the urgency of when to work. So you end up watching TV the whole day and you're like, damn, I'm tired.
Mm.
So you don't feel like drawing anymore. But then if you try to draw early in the day, or at least I do, I'm like, okay, 2 p.m. I'm gonna draw. Oh, I have to make lunch. Oh, I gotta walk my dog. Oh, I gotta clean. Oh, I'm so tired now. I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes.
Pretty much
So
should
that
be
is
like because I sometimes when I want to do stuff, be like I'd be telling people like I don't know, I'm not going to exert the energy to go and find out. So
exactly. Yeah. To use another sports metaphor, I'm thinking like, when you go to the gym and you have a spotter and you're trying to like use a machine, you can kind of max out, right? You can like push, and you have a trainer being like, you got this, like go, and then you don't take too long to rest if you're going with your friend who's your gym buddy, and then she's like gonna judge you if you're taking a long time to rest. So you kind of push yourself farther. But when you go to the gym alone, or at least when I go to the gym alone, I'm like, all right, I'm on the leg press, I'm gonna push. Oh, I don't want to injure myself. Let's take that down a little bit. And it becomes hard to build that muscle because you're always to yourself going to be able to make these excuses of like, well, here's a reason why I shouldn't do this. Feel like the same thing with drawing is like I'm like, well, I don't want to burn myself out, so I'll just not do this. And it's like it's true that I shouldn't try to burn myself out. And I do need to be cognizant about that, but I think much like the gym, you don't realize how much you actually have left in the tank if someone just kind of is there to support you and push you. And that's a challenge that I'm finding in being an artist just working alone. Whereas you work for a company and they're like, hey, you better get this done this week. And I'm like, oh, okay. But no one's doing that for me as an artist.
That's
It's just me.
interesting. Just shoot.
Yeah.
And I know it's a lot because with me doing this too, I'm a one-man person. Like, shoot. Some of my friends, I get like a lot of DMs on my Instagram who are a little concerned about me, saying like I'm pulling like these like I stay up until like 2 o'clock in the morning trying to get this stuff done.
Mm.
And it's like it's a lot of work. My parents begin like, yeah, we need to figure out how to make this into a moneymaker because you're doing a lot right now. And
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
yes, Aria, I am doing a lot because I know
Sure. I believe it.
once I get off, I'm probably going to be editing out more stuff, including
Yeah.
your stuff too. 'Cause,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
you do put out a lot of episodes a week.
yeah, I think you've seen some of my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a busy guy, so
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
just gotta figure out how to make it work. But yes, I do a lot, so I just need to
Hmm.
figure out how we're gonna make this work. And
Yeah.
it may take even more time because it takes a lot of dedication. So I didn't think I'd
Yeah.
be able to do this much throughout this year.
Yeah. Well, I think we should both pat ourselves on the back on the things that we did accomplish at least.
Hmm. That's all we can do. So and then and let's see. Now imagine we have this conversation again 10 years from now. Forget the job titles and follower counts. What would you have to happen creatively for you to look back and say, I became the artist I wanted to become?
Hmm. I will draw eyes that are not crooked. Um, well, I mean, obviously there's a technical level where I'm like, oh, I really want to be able to kind of like feel proud of my drawings and feel like they have this like level of technique to them. And I also think I just want volume of work. Like in 10 years, I want to have created a lot of work, like both to improve, but also to just have been able to start and finish things and like have those be analyzed in and of themselves and like seen as part of like this larger artistic journey that I'm on. And I want them to be long too. Not super long, but like, like a book or more. Um, because I really love artists who you kind of see their growth through their like, I think particularly with like authors, comic artists, directors, you see their growth over multiple movies and or like bodies of work. And I think I would love to be someone who can be seen as having a body of work that has like a narrative to it, that has a trajectory to it. And I would love just to have something, not to say that I'm famous or anything, but I would love to have someone interested in my work and all of it be like, oh, well, this is when she did this, or this is what she learned from this, or, these are the consistent themes in all of them. And I feel like I need at least three big works to be able to make those comparisons. So that's how I would feel happy in 10 years. Three larger works to compare and not crooked eyes. That's my goal.
I'll be rooting for you, okay?
Thank you.
Uh, And last, so we're at the finale, which is section
Oh,
6, the conversation question.
okay. With
Now,
Philip Cooper.
your career has moved through fine art, comics, cultural history, editing, collaboration, and now another chapter of creating for yourself.
Hmm.
Now, after everything you've experienced so far up to this point, what does art allow Aria Villafranca to say that ordinary words never could?
Mm, wow. Very philosophical question to end on.
Mm,
What does art say that I couldn't? I feel like, well, I guess I'll talk about why I like art. And I think this can kind of help is that I've very historically in my life, had a lot of trouble connecting with people. I feel like it takes a really long time to connect with me and get to know me and understand me because, you're limited by things like time and topic and like the ability to talk about certain things in a certain way. And what I like about art is that for me, it's able to take individual and larger ideas and communicate it to someone, like with both the idea and the emotion in it. So in a way, it's like I'm having a conversation with the reader. And by reading my work, they understand me a little bit. They understand what I think. They understand what I care about. They understand how I'm feeling. And for someone to feel that just by knowing me, they do have to really know me. And it takes a long time. Art is a way to kind of easily convey this to strangers
Hmm.
and, to be known to them. And to be known is to be loved, right? And so I find art to be a way to express things that I care about in ways that words can't. Again, unless you know me and are spending like months to years with me, it's a way to share myself with others and for others to know me.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, I completely understand.
Mhm.
Everything that you've done at this point. You're still helping people today. And, even though you're still doing independent stuff, and you're still
Yeah,
going to different events and trying to educate people on the experiences that you have too while you're selling
yeah,
your comics. I know when we
yeah.
first met, I was like, hey, oh, she has a lot of interesting stuff here. And I was like, I just had to
Thank
learn
you.
more about you.
Yeah, and I hope it was interesting. I did become a guest on your podcast, so I hope it's been enlightening to people. And yeah, and just being able to share my work and I guess my thoughts with people is really nice. So I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to, you know, talk about myself.
Of course.
To
Listen,
talk about myself a lot.
oh yeah, of course. Listen, like I said, I'm trying to interview anybody I come across.
Hmm.
Got to vet them first.
Oh
Can't just bring
yes,
anybody.
I'm glad I passed the vetting process.
No problem. Well, I guess that wraps everything up. And yes, like you said, you enjoyed the time here. So, thanks for
Yeah,
letting me
it's
talk to
great.
you.
Thank you for having me. And, I hope that your listeners had a good time. And yeah, if they want to check out my work, you can find me on social media, my website, or as a guest on this podcast in 10 years.
There you go.